Hello everyone, this is Katie Colleen here. Welcome back, Colleen Clan, or if you're new, then come join the family. Today I'll be showing you how to make your very own pair of superhero boot covers for your cosplay. Now I'll be making a pair of Supergirl boots for my Supergirl cosplay. So first you're going to need a pair of existing boots. Now I got these boots off of Depop. Buying boots secondhand is a great option because you're going to be covering them with fabric anyways. So first I'm going to take this saran wrap and I'm going to wrap it around both my leg and my foot with the boot on it. Once my leg and foot has been securely wrapped, I'm going to cover it with masking tape. This is going to create our pattern as the masking tape will hold the shape of the foot and leg that we are covering. I will warn you with this patterning technique though, you get very sweaty, like very, very sweaty. So while your leg is all wrapped up, I'm gonna take a Sharpie and I'm gonna draw out where I want the designs. Now for this particular Supergirl boot, there are a few different things I wanna draw in. First, there is the gold piece at the top, and there's also a seam down the center of the boot. So you'll want to draw in anywhere that you want to sew a seam. And then we can release my leg from its masking tape prison. So I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and very, very carefully cut myself out of our masking tape pattern. I like to also cut a center back seam as well. This just makes it a little bit easier for patterning. I'm using the Yaya Han 4-way matte stretch for these boot covers. Now the methods I'm going to be showing you in this video is for very stretchy fabrics. If you are using a non-stretch, you can still follow this tutorial, but you will need to put a zipper or some other clasp in the back so that you can get your foot in through the boot. So with our masking tape pattern, I cut off the gold piece at the top and I'm going to be cutting out our red part of the boots. So you'll need 2 pieces for each boot, right? And then I want to make this boot completely lined. So I'm going to do that all over again. One thing I can recommend, kind of depending on the stretch of your fabric, is to add just a little bit of extra fabric in that back seam. The thing with the masking tape method is it is a very, very, very tight fit on your leg. And most fabric will not be able to fit as tight as that masking tape. So I like to give myself a little bit of extra room in the back to work with. Now I'm gonna do a little optional extra fancy step here. So if you look at the reference picture for these Supergirl boots, there is a center seam and then there's just this little line of fabric, it appears, in that center seam. I'm making myself a piece of bias tape and inserting it in that seam. So if you are not being extra, you can just sew that front center seam together. And when I'm sewing this front seam, I am using a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine because it is a stretch fabric. If you're being extra like me, you can cut out a piece of bias. I am folding it in half, sewing that together, and then I'm just gonna sandwich my little bias strip into that front seam. And then I am going to sew all of that together. Now I haven't forgotten about the gold details. Let's get into those next. So I am cutting out just this top border, and that will be sewn onto our red boot. Now again, I am being extra, and I decided why not just add gold bias tape to those seams as well. So the same thing I did with the red bias tape, I am repeating in the gold. And now let's attach our little gold band to the top. I have a few tips for sewing really weird shapes like this. First of all, use a lot of pins. And then second, you can see I'm sewing along here. I'm coming up to one of those little V shapes, one of the turns, and I'm going to leave the needle down in the fabric when I turn to go down the other side of that V shape. This will hold our fabric layers in place while I get everything resituated for the next piece. Now for the outside layer, I also just decided to do this on hard mode. So I did the same thing, but inserting our bias strip in the center. Now I just wasn't a big fan of how this looked. So that's when I started top stitching. And once I started top stitching, I could not be stopped. So first I decided to top stitch down that bias layer. This will help your bias stay flat. Now, top stitch is really just a straight stitch that I'm doing along the edge here. And I did not stop there, oh no. And then I was like, while I'm here, I might as well just top stitch that bias that I've put down the center of the boot as well. So with that done, this is how the boot covers look. This is the outside layer. All we have left is the back seam. And once you've done that, here comes the moment of truth. This is when you can actually try on your boot covers. Now I'm going to be trying both the lining layer and then the outside layer over it. This is how the boot covers will be worn. And then I'm going to put my boots on and I'm going to see if they fit correctly. We can now attach the lining and outside layers. Now I'm once again being extra and adding a bias strip, but you certainly don't have to. So I'm lining up the very top of our boot covers and I'm going to have the right sides together and I'm just gonna sew along the top there. Once that's done, you can see how I can just flip our little boot cover thing inside out. And then of course I'm gonna do a top stitch as well so it all matches. Now I like to have the very bottom of the boot cover also have a finished seam. Now I've seen a lot of cosplayers just leave this seam unfinished and then you can cut it after it is glued to the boot. I personally just would rather have this seam finished and top stitched. The downside of this is it means you have to be a pretty darn close fit to your boot. Whereas if you leave this seam unfinished, you can always cut it shorter. You can still kind of play around with it after you've done the gluing. So this is kind of your personal choice. I've seen cosplayers do it either way. And now we can attach the boot covers to the boots. I will be using a permanent boot cover method, meaning that once these covers are glued down, they are never leaving these shoes. Now I'm using the E6000 glue for this. This is an industrial strength glue. Now the way that I glue this on is I kind of go section at a time. So I am adding the E6000 to just the toe of the boot here. And then I am pulling down the boot cover, lining up that very bottom seam of the boot cover with the bottom of the boot. And something else I'm doing is I am pinning the cover into the shoe. And those pins just go straight through the boot cover into the boot. And that just kind of holds everything in place while I glue down the next section. I will say that this does not do great things for your pins, so I make enough boot covers that I just have a set of pins that are for boot covers and other more nasty gluing and foam work and such. Now this E6000 glue takes at least 24 hours to dry. I usually like to give it 48 hours just to be safe. And then your boot covers are done. And with boot covers, you want them to not fall down. Now there are a few other tricks for that. So another option is you can wear leggings or tights. Now just wearing the tights alone, sometimes the friction can help hold your boot covers up. Another option is you can just sew the boot covers to the tights. This completely stops your boot covers from sliding down. So it's completely up to you, but I wanted to at least put that option out there. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!